Hi my friends, it's Eliza, and today I wanted to share with you my miscarriage story and endometriosis. This is going to be a little bit of a longer video, so I'm going to cut it into two parts. The first part being my miscarriage and my second part being endometriosis. I didn't really want to talk about my miscarriage, but I knew that I couldn't talk about that I couldn't talk about endometriosis without talking about my miscarriage. And I also wanted to warn you guys, I do tend to smile sometimes when I'm upset, so I'm not saying this as like taking it lightly. It really did affect me, but sometimes I tend to smile or even laugh when I'm upset. So I did want to let you guys know that. So I started my period when I was 12 years old, and I was actually the last one of my friends to have her period. I just couldn't wait until I had my period to be a woman, and I didn't know what I was asking for, because once I did start to menstruate, I had extremely heavy periods, very painful periods, to the point where I would start shaking and sweating, and I just really couldn't take the pain. It was really difficult for me to deal with, even onto adulthood. However, once I hit 18, I did end up going for my first visit with a gynecologist, and I let them know my issues, that I had extremely heavy periods and that I had very painful periods also. So during that appointment, I also asked if it was uncommon to have a very heavy period, if it's abnormal. They said no, everything seems fine. They ended up doing a pap smear, and at the time, before, it used to be every year that you would have a pap smear, and I was put on the pill first, but then I ended up sorry guys, my kitten is gonna be meowing for a little bit. So then I went on birth control, and that seemed to help a little bit. However, it did give me a lot of mood swings. It made my depression a lot worse, and it wasn't a great thing overall. It also made me gain a lot of weight. So that's just something I don't want to do for the future. And once I got married when I was 26 on July 27, 2012. And the conversation that me and my husband had were regarding children was that I was going to go off of birth control, and that we weren't going to plan on having a child, but we weren't going to prevent it either. So when it happened, it would happen. However, I had read different materials, and they all said most women within the first 12 months of having unprotected sex, usually you tend to get pregnant in that time period. Unfortunately for us, that took over 3 years for me to even have a miscarriage. On August 18, 2015 is when I had my first miscarriage. I was a little late, but I had taken numerous amount of pregnancy tests, thinking every time that I thought for just even a moment that I was pregnant, I would take a pregnancy test, or even before my period, I would take a pregnancy test. So I had taken, I don't even know how many pregnancy tests by that time. Two days prior, I had started bleeding, and it was very light at first. However, the morning of my miscarriage, I ended up going into the shower, and all of a sudden I just felt like just this pressure and just kind of like contractions, and I felt like I had to push, so I pushed, and then I had a little embryo, like about that big. So it was a little circle, and it looked like a really huge blood clot. So the time I was just kind of in shock, and I kind of knew what it was, and I just was trying to lie to myself and just tell me, no, this is not really happening. And it was a little tissue about that big, and I ended up rubbing on it, and in the middle I knew what I was gonna find, and I ended up seeing the little fetus. You could see the little face and its little body and everything. and I just totally freaked out, and I ended up putting it in a jar and going to work. And I don't even know what I was thinking. I just kind of went into shock and just decided to go to work. And once I got to work, I was just crying, and I had told my coworker on my way to work that I had a miscarriage because I was crying. And when I got to work, she ended up taking me to my manager's office, and she ended up just telling me, just go home. And I told her, but I have all this work and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, it's okay, just go home. And I think that's, seriously, she is just the sweetest for saying that, because I could not think at that time, and I needed her to tell me to just go home. And shortly after, I did end up going to the doctor. However, at the time, I was the only one working, and we did not have insurance, so it was really difficult for me to go to the doctor at that time. We ended up going, and it costed me $200 to go see a gynecologist, and pretty much it was a horrible experience. So when we got there, I let her know what happened, what I should do, and I kept asking her different questions, like how long should I be bleeding for, when should I be concerned, is this too much blood, when will I have my next period, and just stuff like that. And all she kept saying, I don't know, everyone's different, I don't know, everyone's different, to every single question. And prior to going to the clinic, I had also taken a pregnancy test because I knew that they were going to eventually ask for that, and I wanted to pay as little as possible. The thing to know, guys, is when you take a pregnancy test, it may or may not be positive if you're having a miscarriage. It depends on when the baby stopped growing. So you might have a positive test even though you're not pregnant anymore. So when I went to go do the urine test, I didn't know what it was for. However, I just ended up doing it, and I left the room, and she continued talking to my husband and just saying about, she just kept talking about when she was going to retire, and that she wished that she was already retired and that she couldn't wait to be retired. And it kind of made my husband a little upset. And I went back, and she ended up telling me that the urine test was just to see whether I was pregnant or not. And I told her, I obviously know that I'm not anymore. And even she stepped away for a moment, and I told my husband, I just don't want to stay here anymore. She's not going to answer any of my questions. I asked for a pelvic exam just because I know that both my biological mother and her mother have had a lot of issues with miscarriages, and I didn't want to deal with the same issues that they had. I ended up leaving, and I was bleeding for about 2 weeks, just so you guys know, in case you guys are wondering whether you're having a miscarriage or not. So I ended up having bleeding for 2 weeks, and about 2 weeks later, I ended up getting my period again. So let's now just fast forward to January 2018. By then, I had also had 2 other miscarriages, and this was my 4th. So the story with that is I woke up and I thought I had peed myself, and I went into the bathroom, and I just felt like something was about to just gush, like something bigger. And I went into the tub instead of the toilet, and just a bunch of just tissue and blood just started running down my legs. And I sat down and I screamed out for my husband to come and help me, and it literally looked like a murder scene. It was very bloody. And I called my primary care doctor, and I let her know what was going on. And the doctor on call ended up telling me if I'm bleeding more than a tampon every hour, that I should go to the hospital, and I definitely was. So it did take a while to get a hold of her. So by then it had already an hour passed, and I just kept bleeding like if I was a faucet. Then we ended up going to the hospital, and it was a little frustrating. I was seen right away, or not necessarily right away, but I was checked in right away, and the nurse was kind of rude. It was though about 5 in the morning, so maybe she just had a long shift, but she seemed to be very rude with me, very, snappy with me. However, the doctor came in, and he ended up telling me that we did a bunch of tests, and he ended up also doing an ultrasound and told me that I was having a miscarriage, and that I also, he ended up doing, or not him, but he ended up ordering a vaginal ultrasound, and that's where they get a wand and they put it in you, and they do the ultrasound that way because it was too early to check over my stomach. So he ended up telling me I was having a miscarriage and that I also had cysts in my ovaries. And he discharged me and told me to follow up with my doctor. Even though I was still bleeding, I was wearing a diaper, and pretty much for the entire day I just continued to bleed. So the following month I started a new job, and I ended up getting insurance, and I ended up following up with a new doctor. And she wasn't technically a new doctor because I had seen her before, and in fact, years prior, I had worked with her for at least 4.5 years. I used to work for a call center, and I would answer for her after hours. So I felt a little bit more comfortable with her. She always answered her phone right away. She was very attentive to patients. So every time I would call her, she would call patients right back. So I knew that I can rely on her a little bit more. And I knew everyone in her practice already. All right, so my cat's being very needy, and she needs to be held right now because she's just gonna keep meowing if I don't hold her. So pretty much I ended up going to the doctor's appointment, and she kept pushing birth control on me for my cysts to help me with that. And I let her know that I had been married for several years, and that was not my plan. I wanted to have a full-term child. I already have been married, and that's not the plan for me. So she kept insisting on me taking birth control, and I was extremely frustrated. And at the end, she's like, fine then, don't take it. Then you can just die. And I was just like, whoa, that's very intense. No need for you to tell me that. And I just kind of shut down. I got in my car and I just started crying, and so I wasn't gonna go back to the doctor. I didn't care if I took medication for my anxiety. I wasn't gonna be treated like that anymore. Okay, so that's it for the miscarriage part. However, before I leave, I did want to mention a few things that I did to help me through my miscarriage process. First of all, I did go on YouTube to look up different videos on how they can help me so that I know that I wasn't going insane with all the different symptoms. I couldn't stop crying with my first miscarriage for at least a month and a half, and I was angry, and I had all these feelings, and I didn't know that I was like, I just felt like I was going insane pretty much. And thankfully I was able to look up, at the time there was only 2 good YouTube videos on miscarriages. However, now there's a whole lot of them out there, so look at those to comfort you. Also, I went on Facebook. There was a few Facebook forums that were very helpful, just helped me get through the heartache of missing a child, and they were very supportive and helped me with different questions I had, or just even reading their information let me know that I wasn't going too crazy. And I'm sorry I keep saying that, but it's because I just felt like overwhelmed with hormones that I didn't know. I had never gone through that. And I was just so overwhelming, like overwhelmed with sadness, that it wasn't even sadness for the baby that I had lost, but I would just start crying for nothing. And going to that was very helpful. I also have an amazing group of women around me at the time. I worked, all the women unfortunately around me had also lost babies. Most of them had, and they all helped me and guided me and let me know that all my feelings were valid and that I would be okay. And that helped a lot. One other thing that helped me out was one of my friends came to me and let me know that miscarriages suck. The end. And that just made me feel so much better, that it doesn't matter. Like, there's nothing, I don't think there was anything anybody else could say other than it sucked. Because like, oh, I'm so sorry for your loss, you'll have another one, you're, well, at least you can get pregnant. And all those comments ended up really hurting me instead of helping me. And that was one of the comments that ended up helping me the most. Another thing is to not blame myself. Fortunately, 1 in 4 women, actually not 1 in 4 women, but 1 in 4 pregnancies is a miscarriage. And knowing that fact helped me. And another friend, I have one more friend that ended up telling me her journey with her baby or her 2 babies. One, she was fine, and she just had a lot of complications with her pregnancy. And another one, she was using illegal substances, and she had a perfect pregnancy. Her baby came out fine. She actually ended up becoming a doctor, and that made me feel like, okay, it's okay. And she just told me if it was meant to be at that moment, it was meant to be. There's nothing that you could have done to have changed the scenario. So don't blame yourself. Unfortunately, miscarriages are very common. So I want to tell you that if you're going through a miscarriage right now, unfortunately, it's very, very common. It sucks. But we'll get through this, and I won't say you'll be like, there's always going to be a little bit of hurt in your heart, but I know that one day, I'm religious, so I know that one day I'll see my child again, and that does give me a little bit of comfort. So I hope that will comfort you guys. I hope this video has helped at least one person out there, and I will see you guys later for the next video. Bye. Thank you, my friends, for watching. I hope this will help at least one of you guys out. Please don't forget to like and subscribe if you like this video. Please comment down below if this has ever affected you. Also, I have an Instagram account, Eliza Brad. You can also find me on TikTok, Eliza Brads with an S.